Hello, welcome to City Podcast, coming to you from the Manchester Evening News. My name's Joe Bray, joined by Simon Bajkowski. The week without any City football, but I'm sure there's been enough to keep you going. That Julian Alvarez penalty was a shocker in terms of just how that got disallowed. That did feel sorry for him, but I mean, I don't know about you, Si, but it made me think if that was City, imagine the pain of going out to Real Madrid for something like that.
Yeah, it also made me think, imagine if Real had that disallowed. Like, imagine just, how many investigations there would be. Imagine how many government campaigns there would be to get Real back into the Champions League. Yeah, and quite funny because, you would imagine that if it was Real against another team that wasn't from Madrid, there might be a whole media thing, whereas they can't really do that when it's two teams from Madrid. So yeah, drama.
I think it was Rudiger, but I'm happy to be corrected. I think one of them was like, "Oh well, referees have got a tough job anyway, so we shouldn't criticise." And I'm thinking, sorry, is this Real Madrid player saying this? It just felt a little bit unlike a
Yeah,
Real
I
Madrid
definitely saw
representative.
Courtois being like, move on, nothing to see.
It's being caught twice,
Yeah.
yeah. But it
Yeah.
says something when UEFA and FIFA are willing to change the rules because it was clearly an
Yeah.
accident. But
Yeah, well, it's always been a bit funny because, unless you're sort of chipping it up to yourself and volleying it in, which is that easier than a penalty or not? I'm not even sure it is, but clearly you don't get an advantage from it. So yeah, really, really harsh on Atletico, and another sort of moment that made you think Real will probably win the Champions League again.
well, especially as the best team in the world, Liverpool have been knocked out as well. So that's a blow for them. Another shootout there. Let's move on to more recent matters. We've learned the England squad this morning. A couple of surprises in there from Thomas Tuchel. Mainly, Jordan Henderson is still playing football apparently because he's in the squad. Kyle Walker is in. I've got to say I was a little bit surprised at that, but then when you see Henderson in, you're thinking, okay, he's going for some sort of old guard to help his new look squad. No Jack Grealish, so Walker and Foden are the only City players in there. I was surprised a little bit about Walker. I don't think Grealish can have any complaints given he hasn't started a Premier League game since before Christmas.
Yeah. Walker's the surprise, really, because Grealish, we've been here so many times before, didn't make the Euros, said this is going to be my season, I'll prove everyone wrong, hasn't proven anyone wrong, just hasn't played enough. I think it's 4 starts this season, this calendar year. Salford City, Leyton Orient, Plymouth, and Real Madrid, where he got injured after 20 minutes. So he's just not played against the standard of opposition that you would expect on international level, never mind City's level. Walker is an unusual one, but maybe Trent Alexander-Arnold suffers that injury in midweek, and maybe that kind of plays into it. Rico Lewis as well was kind of seen as the next one to take over from Walker, and he's regressed. So and also, Thomas Tuchel tried to sign Kyle Walker for Bayern when he was Bayern manager in 2023. So the pair clearly get on. Walker is trying to edge towards 100 caps. I think he's on 93. So there's a chance he does it, but I think he's been picked for sort of what he's done in his career and his qualities in the England camp rather than anything he's done this season.
It's a very experimental defence, shall we say. Obviously, John Stones is injured. You might want Harry Maguire there for sort of similar reasons, that he's a good England player, but he's injured, and a couple of other players. There's no sort of recognised centre-back pairing that you can put together from there. Mark Gay is the experienced one of those young group, and then you've got Dan Burn out of nowhere, who's a good defender. Whether he's an England defender, I'm not sure, but it's I don't know what I was expecting from the squad. I did not expect the squad we've got, but I suppose from a City point of view, there's James Trafford in there as well, which is another international call up for an academy product, and he's having a very good season in the Championship.
Yeah. And sort of, has got people thinking, oh, could he be brought back? Could he maybe come back to City if they're having their own goalkeeping issues? I'm not sure he will. I think, he was very close to Newcastle in summer, and that may still happen. I think it'd be a surprise if he was back at City, but he's been in unbelievable form in what is a record-breaking Burnley defence that are sort of knocking on the door to come back to the Premier League. So he's always been well liked within the England setup, and a lot of England squads are made up of players who are well liked within the England setup. So he's sort of trained with them before. It's good to see him back in the squad. And yeah, he's got a chance to, impress in training and maybe see what he can do. We've had sort of Taylor Howard-Bellis make his first appearance and score this season. So yeah, like you say, another City graduate doing well, even if the numbers of City players in the England squad are very much down on where they've been.
That was it. We used to have like 5 City players, 6 maybe, and a couple of former players there. I suppose Cole Palmer is in the squad, but he's having a bit of a dip in form for the first time since leaving. But I wondered if Lewis would get in, just because he's not played very well in recent months. But if you're going to look forward and build a squad full of players that you think are going to be part of your squad for the next few years, he's got to be one of them. And it's probably a reflection on the fact that he can't nail down that right back spot at City, that he's not got the England one. But when, on the other hand, you look at the names that he selected, Quanta, for example, for Liverpool, he's not getting regular games either. So I did think Lewis might get a look in, but I'm also not surprised that he hasn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's one of those where it is quite a personal thing and a subjective thing. And as much as kind of, I think Lewis got more of a shout than anyone was expecting when Lee Carsley came in. And Carsley came in and said, right, I'm going to have these players and I'm going to play a particular way. And if that hadn't happened, then I don't think Lewis's absence would be as much of a surprise. But Tuchel's entitled to do what he wants to do, and he clearly has not seen what he wants from Lewis over the last few months. November, since he got the job, kind of coincided with Lewis's slump in form, so it's not too surprising to see him not in it. He has got the time to fight his way back in, but it's a message to him to say, look, this is where you're at compared to where you were at early in the season, and you've got to sort of impress the new guy.
Yeah, I wonder if Tuchel's got to impress the fans as well, because that squad hasn't really gone down particularly well, and it's the first of many, and he's got to look at these players, and there's a lot of injuries, but it's not really the inspiring squad that maybe people were hoping for. Let's move on slightly before we get to the City men's team and looking towards the Brighton game. There has been a bit of a shock in the women's team in that they sacked manager Gareth Taylor this week. Maybe not necessarily a shock that he's left his job. I think we were probably expecting end of the season. It felt like it was maybe coming to a natural end, but to part ways with him 5 days before a League Cup final, and then you're going into sort of a Champions League quarter-final, all against Chelsea, these games, and a big WSL game against Chelsea at the Etihad. That's Jose Mourinho levels of I don't know what to call it, but it's a big development and a very, very big decision on City's part to pull the trigger and pull it when they did.
Yeah, and I mean the first manager sacking at City since 2013, maybe. Mancini was sacked then. Pellegrini was just kind of left at the end of his contract, all very amicable. Nick Cushing left very amicably. I mean, a few academy coaches have been moved on. I don't think they'd like to call them sacks, but they've left at the end of their contract. So yeah, a real bolt from the blue. And yeah, City were in a very, very good position last year and threw it away in 5 minutes against Arsenal to blow the league to a very good Chelsea team. And they were in a very, very good position just before Christmas. And then their form has not been great since, really. And they've struggled with injuries to key players like Lauren Hemp and Alex Greenwood and Bunny Shaw and Miedemar. It's been I think their lack of squad depth has been exposed, but at the same time, someone clearly feels that they've got a chance of winning a cup final. They've got a chance of going through in the Champions League, and they've got a huge WSL game with Chelsea. And they feel like the best thing to do is to do it without Gareth Taylor. He's had his player battles. Chloe Kelly was very vocal about wanting to get out of City before she left to join Arsenal on loan in January. Ellie Roebuck is another who kind of put a suggestive post on social media when Taylor was sacked. So yeah, it's wild, really. I mean, you were down there this week. What was the kind of mood among the players?
It was notable that the sacking came the day before they had this big media day, and then I wonder if the decision was going to come, if that played any part in the timing of it late on Monday night, because you don't want to put Taylor up talking about a cup final and then sack him a couple of days later, and it all felt quite rushed, if you like. And I mean, to be fair to City, Alex Greenwood spoke to us, and she's the captain. She's not playing in the final, but she was basically saying she got on with him. She was brought to the club by Taylor and made captain, and she can sort of appreciate that other players aren't going to get on with a manager who doesn't play them. But because she was sort of a key part of his team, then she only had sort of positive words to say. But I think whether it was the sort of message of the squad, but it was definitely we've got to look forward, and if we keep looking at what's gone on, then we take our eye off the final as well. So it felt like quite a professional, like we only want to look at the final, but at the same time they were definitely shocked. You can tell by sort of the answer she was giving, she did not expect her manager that she's worked so closely with to be sacked when he was. And I spoke to Vivian Miedemar as well, and she's a brilliant character, but she's a lot more laid back in sort of the Kevin De Bruyne mold. She was shocked as well, but also just made it clear that sometimes you turn up to work in football and your coach or your national team coach isn't in the job anymore, and you just got to get on with it and work through it. So she was a bit more laid back and casual about it. But I think it is fair to say that the squad definitely didn't expect it, and they had a meeting with the club who sort of explained the thinking, and the club have made clear it's about Champions League qualification. The top three clubs in the WSL get Europe. City are fourth and probably the least informed side of those contenders. So yeah, they've got a final. That's a great way to kick off, and they're still on for a domestic cup treble, which feels unlikely from this stage, but it is still possible. Yeah, you feel like the club are determined to improve that WSL record, and that's the one thing that Taylor didn't do. You can point to Champions League as being a a difficult competition. He's won FA Cups, he's won League Cups, but his league record wasn't good enough. So it was an interesting day to be down there at City. But yeah, you could just tell that nobody expected it from people you were speaking to the players we spoke to, and just the mood. There was one moment where Cushing we're in the sort of the big indoor pitch, and Cushing just popped his head round the door and went to have his photos about 12 hours after being appointed, and sort of sheepishly walked in and shook some hands and walked out. But another factor is he doesn't really want the job full time, so he's been brought in just to secure this Champions League place, and he left New York City after 2 years as manager of their men's team, and still feels like he's got stuff to do in the men's game. And he had his press conference this morning and didn't deny that either, and just said he likes to challenge himself as a coach, and he's committed to. He's worked closely with City for years and years and years, and that's another factor that they'll have to navigate in the summer. But no, it's the comparison I thought was obviously the Mourinho sacking before City played Spurs in that League Cup final. But I just thought if that was any team in the Premier League, it would be the whole news for the week. I think that's the equivalent of how significant that change is, and when they've chosen to do it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the interesting thing for me is that you say it's to, secure the Champions League place. They're not kind of fully out of it. Like normally you would sack a manager when they're out of it, or you would give them that time to say, well, your aim is to qualify for the Champions League, and if you don't, then we'll sack you. But and it's also, Taylor's been under a lot of pressure for a long time, and then he was under pressure, last season and this season, and gets a 3-year deal, and that came completely out of the blue because the question was like, is Gareth Taylor going to be sacked? No, he's got a 3-year deal. So it's the sporting director that gave him that has left the club, and you sort of wonder, are the people who are left at the club, were they not as enthused at that 3-year deal as maybe they seemed at the time? But you speak to anyone who works in any role in football, and they say they're not in a job for life. They're in a job where the question is when they will get sacked rather than if. So it's going to be interesting to see how City women do. It's going to be interesting to see how Nick Cushing takes to the job again, and it's going to be interesting to see where Gareth Taylor pops up next.
Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting one. But I'm looking at the table. They're a point off third, having played a game more. I think that summer appointment is going to be crucial, like you say, in the direction they want to go. Because United, well, I mean, when Taylor started, United weren't a WSL force. Now they are. You've got Arsenal, who are always there making impressive signings, and Chelsea are just unstoppable, it seems, even when Emma Hayes goes. So it's a much more difficult task to get the Champions League, as they found out. And I'm not sure they'll get it this year. I'm not sure how many trophies they'll win, but speaking to the players and listening to Cushing today, they absolutely believe that they can. So if it turns out that they've sat Taylor and they go on and win at least one trophy and get Champions League, then it's been a good decision, I think. So it'll be it's always interesting when a manager goes and why, but I just feel the days before a cup final just adds the extra drama and extra pressure on everybody. But yeah, 4 games in a row against Chelsea. There's a League Cup final on Saturday, and I think that will be a very, very intriguing game, more so than maybe it was before. That will be taking place just before City play Brighton. That is a big game for the City men in their own Champions League qualification hopes. We're confident-ish that 5th place will get Champions League, but the defeat at Forest has sort of just opened that race for the top 4, top 5. They can't really afford not to win after that Forest game, can they? It's a quite a defining game before the international break.
Yeah, and I think teams will look at that Forest performance and win and think, well, why can't we do that? Brighton will think that, having beaten them earlier in the season. Bournemouth will think that for the FA Cup, having beaten them earlier in the season. And everyone else, teams that you wouldn't expect City to lose to, will be thinking, yeah, I think we can have a go at this City team. The more they lose. So, it's a big chance at the Etihad, where City have, I think, 6 of the last 10 are at home. City kind of have to put a marker on to say, we will be strong at home and we will win our home games, and that'll take us over the line to the top 4, top 5 finish that we need to get to.
I'm going to correct you there. You said the Etihad Stadium. I'm just reading an article on the Manchester Evening News. It's not called the Etihad Stadium this weekend, is it?
No, it's the City in the Community Etihad Stadium. They have a game every year, which is given to City in the Community, which is the club's official charity. And yeah, they provide experiences for local fans and fans who are deserving of these experiences, who maybe wouldn't get to have them any other time. And yeah, we will see the return of the social media graphics and the matchday program, where all the players have been drawn by primary school children, which is always quite fun. I think there's definitely one game where they won like 6-0 and you ended up seeing like all of these pictures, and yeah, it's quite fun. Nice things. So it's good that they showcase the work. I think Pep's been in the hoodie a few times. I think he might be again for his press conference today. So yeah, it's maybe a bit gimmicky to rename the stadium for the day, but it is for a good cause rather than just kind of renaming it after a darts player. So there's a lot to like about City in the Community.
Lots of just so much stadium talk this week with all the Old Trafford designs and everything that we hear about the progress in the North Stand and stadiums everywhere you look. I was looking at the comments on our last podcast, and thank you for those who left comments. There was a lot of talk of City's build up, the pace of it. You touched on it there, of what the performance at Forest, and I know you spoke about that on the last podcast. I don't know if I turned to you when Forest scored, and you just couldn't see City scoring. And that's very, very rarely been the case, when even with 10 minutes to go, you think, well, they'll still get a draw here. They'll just turn up and they'll just be a bit more urgent. And I was sort of looking at the overall numbers behind City's play. There's been less attacks. It's been slower. There's been more crosses, maybe less clinical. And even though there's the same amount of chances conceded, if you like, a lot more goals conceded. So the general trend was less possession, less clinical, less precise in attack, and leakier in defence. And that all just doesn't add up to a team that they've sort of lost that fear factor, if you like. And we saw it at Forest, we've seen it before, but teams are not going to come to the Etihad, like you say, and be particularly scared anymore. Brighton have beaten City already this season. They have their own style of play. It's set up to be a much more open game, and it's up to City to speed things up, really.
Yeah, I think you've just got the situation where everyone who plays in the middle is a bit broken, and everyone who plays out wide is inconsistent. We saw the team for Forest, and it was like, and everyone kind of thought, oh, great, Savinho and Doku on the wings. That should really go at Forest, and they didn't. And Foden and Silva are not in good form. Nico Gonzalez, the team kind of collapsed once he went off, but he was taken off before he was sent off because he looked like he was going to get a red card. He looked far more likely to get a second yellow than he did come up with an assist or a goal. So, you were lacking in the middle, you were lacking out wide, and then you just had a big man up front, wondering like when he was ever going to see the ball. It's been like that too often this season, where City just haven't had an attacking threat, and Pepper's recognised it and he's realised it, but he's not been able to consistently fix it. And it looked like it was a solid first half from City that looked like they could build to it, but then they just kind of fell away. And what they were missing was that attacking threat to give Forest something else to think about, because the more the second half went on, the more you just felt Forest were in control of the game, playing their game plan, and were the more likely to get the winner.
I think that's it. That teams used to change the tactics to play City because they knew that they weren't going to get the ball, and City would pick them off and find those weaknesses. Even if you defended deep and defended brilliantly for 99% of the game, they would wait until that 1% that you switched off. But I mean, Forest were a good example of just playing their own game and making City adapt their game plan, and it worked for them because they're in good form and they're a very good team with a clear idea of how they want to play. And I think Brighton might have a similar approach, even if it's a different style altogether. But yeah, the Doku and Sabino thing, we've spoken about it a lot. Pep says it's the future, and I think it is. I think that's the direction that the entire club is going in terms of fast players, wide players, and sort of a return to the sort of the Sane and Sterling approach, where win the ball in the middle and get it out wide and let those individuals do their thing. But the problem with that, I think, this season has been you're relying on those individual moments. You're relying on Doku to put a quality ball in. I think he's played nearly 60 games with Haaland and he's got 2 assists for Haaland, and that's not what you need in a team that is geared up to getting Haaland to score goals. And Savinho's been a lot better with assisting Haaland, but on days like the Forest one, it doesn't necessarily work when you've got such a deep defense and a system that is quite good at defending one-on-one. So you can see why they go in the direction they are. But I suppose the difference between this system and the Sterling and Sane system was you always had those runners inside. You had Bernardo and Gundogan, and Aguero was probably a bit more agile than Haaland is. You always had those options, the cutbacks. It's not just the same cross every time, and you can see why he's going with what he's going with, but it's not there yet. And I think you need a lot more speed in the middle as well as on the wings.
Yeah, and the Sterling Sane side was amazing. I think what made it so amazing was City were so bad the year before. City were terrible in 16-17, Pep's first year in English football. So teams were not afraid of them. And teams went at them, and they went at them, and they got absolutely shredded. Now, since then, there's been 6, 7, 8 years of teams sitting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper at the Etihad, or playing at home, because they do not want that to happen to them under any circumstances. And City have had to adapt and adapt and adapt and find new ways to go at them. So, like, yes, the 17-18 side played unbelievable football, but they were able to do so because teams weren't expecting as much from them. So maybe we're getting to that point again where teams are starting to be, come at City a bit more, and maybe they will be able to find space in behind that they haven't. But it does also rely on your wingers. And how many times have we said this season, whoever has been playing out wide, poor decision making in the final third, not enough in the final third, brilliant until they get to the box, and then not good enough. And so until that improves, or until the middle improves to take some of that pressure off, it won't improve. But if you're looking at this season, anyone apart from Erling Haaland has not contributed enough goals. And that is the issue. You're normally talking about City team, I think probably the 17-18 team started it, but most, you get like 4, 5, 6 players all getting 10 Premier League goals, maybe 10 goals and assists. And this season has just been abject, really, in terms of goal scoring?
I'm just trying to get the stats up of goals here. This is all competitions. It's taken a while to load. I think space is the important issue there. Like Doku and Savinho are good when they've got a player running backwards and they can go inside or out and do what they want to do. But it's easy to say with hindsight, but the games
but they're not always good, are they? Because like Doku skinned Alexander Arnold 1,000 times against Liverpool, but it didn't lead to anything. Like
it's the end product, and
yeah.
So Haaland has
not to pick Doku out, but it's just one of those.
I think with Doku as well, he can be very, very good and unbeatable on his day. And on his day when he is brilliant, he'll get a goal and 2 assists. So I think his personal stats are quite grouped in different games. I'm thinking Ipswich away this season and that Bournemouth game where he got 3 or 4 assists last season. So it maybe looks like he's a bit better than he is. I think he's a good player and can still come good, but he just needs to be more consistent more often. And it's that Haaland stat where he's just 2 assists for Haaland is basically 2 seasons is not really good enough for a winger. He's still got other assists for other players. It's just if you're a winger in this system, you need to be setting up Haaland, and that's I think what Savinho's been doing better because the assist numbers are relatively similar. I think Savinho's still a bit better, but Savinho's putting it on a plate for Haaland and has developed that relationship a lot better in a lot shorter time. So yeah, with goals, Haaland has 28. The next is Foden with 10. The next is McAtee with 6. And they've almost all come in the cup competitions or late on in the league. Doku's got 6, Gvardiol and Kovacic 5. There's none of you other attacking players that you're looking for to, like you say, be on 10, 12, 15 goals a season.
Yeah. It's just been the team hasn't functioned properly this season, and you see it in games. And a lot of the problems with the defense. I know it's very boring, but Pep talks about the whole team being responsible for defending, and that isn't as much about scoring goals as it is defending from the front. Because if you're 1-0 up, then you have more control of the game. If you're 2-0 up, the opponents are maybe a bit less motivated to get into the game. If you miss 2 giant chances or you don't create the chances to go 2-0 up, it's 0-0, and the opponents are, more confident because they're still in the game and they think they can nick a goal. So as there have been loads and loads of defensive errors from individuals and collectively bad defending from City this season, but they have had no protection from the players in front of them, not only sort of as a team defending, but also the protection of goals that change game situations. And, like you say, at Forest, nobody thought City were going to score. So if everyone can sense that, then Forest are more emboldened to go for the win. So that lack of kind of goal threat has hurt City all season, really.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how he goes against Brighton. It was a difficult game at the Amex because I think Simpson Pusey started. There was basically no defenders. It was lots of things happening, lots of injuries. There was sort of probably at one of the lowest ebbs of the losing run, even if it might have been towards the start of the run. It just felt like they were out of players and out of ideas. But they still scored a goal. It was Haaland. They looked like they could have just ground something out, and then it was just another collapse. So I would imagine Brighton will come to the Etihad with a lot of confidence. They don't always beat City, but they always give City a decent game. It's one of them. Like they can win, but can you see it? Do they have to go for 3 points? Is a draw good enough? It's one of them where I think not losing is the priority, but I really do think they've got to go for a win. And if they could get a morale boosting bigger win, that's all the more better for the hopes going forward. If they don't win and a couple of results don't go their way, they've then got 2 or 3 weeks where no games, they've got to stare at that table and wonder what they're going to do.
Yeah, it's. I think it's must win. I think they have to win to kind of reassert themselves as favourites for the top 4 or 5. Especially because they are then in FA Cup action. So that is at the end of the international break. They're in the FA Cup. So no more Premier League games in March. This is the last one, and they're at home. And Pep is always very simple about these things, and like Champions League, he will say win your home games, and I think that is the message for the rest of the Premier League, because if City win the home games, they will be all right, but they need to up their level of performance and find that attacking threat. We've had some positives in the sense of everything clicks for the Newcastle game, and Marmoush got those goals. And it was a very good performance, albeit against a disappointing Newcastle. I can't remember the last time City went at a team who played well and beat them. Went at a good team who played well. So they won't care if Brighton don't turn up and they beat them. But if Brighton do turn up, City are going to have to raise their levels. And that was kind of what Pep was saying after the Forest game. The disappointment was that he is not seeing that his players are as motivated as he is to get top 4. And when they have weeks without a game, you don't have the excuse anymore, oh, we're tired, the more long weeks you have. So it's another big opportunity for all of the players on Saturday to remind Guardiola of how good they are and how much they want it. And if they're not able to do that, it's another opportunity for Guardiola and Cheeky Bergerison and Hugo Viana to think, how many of these do we actually want to keep next season?
Well, I'll go back to one of the comments from the last podcast. Ricardo Hotbreak says, no, he says Foden needs to be more aggressive. I'm looking for the one that someone said Foden needs to go, basically. So if they're looking at who's going, then apparently everyone, including Phil Foden, needs to go. I did write it down, but I can't find who it was. But it's one of them where not many players are safe, and they've got a few games to really change the mind. And you look at Grealish, and is he going to get the chance to change the mind? It's working on the training ground and forcing the way in as well as in these games. But those bigger games, like you say, where the teams are going to be involved in a real sort of end-to-end tactical battle, they're going to run out, I think, a little bit. So it's the pressure on those players, and we're talking about the speed of the build-up and the midfield that you say are broken, and that's absolutely true. And some of those players are just shattered because they played too much football either this season or over the last few seasons. It's there's a Champions League place to play for, but I think, as we keep saying, there's a futures of players to play for and positions that might be up for grabs in the summer. You've got a few games there to change their mind. But I think with the international break and the FA Cup, like you say, following this one, this is a game where they really have to control their own sort of narrative and get a win, because if you can put some more distance between Brighton, who I think have won 6 or 7 in a row, they've only lost a couple of times this year. We know they're a very good team. They can take advantage. So it's going to be an interesting one. And as ever, I'm not quite sure which way to go. I'll say 2-1 City, because I think I always do say 2-1 City. But that's again probably because I'm not too confident of a win. And if you say 2-1 and it turns out as a draw or a defeat, you're not incredibly wrong, are you? It's not going to be. we're not looking at this and thinking, oh, they're going to win 5-0, are we?
No. We're thinking they could win very well. But it depends on which City turns up. And again, I think it was before the Liverpool game, Pep basically made that point of, my team are capable of beating anyone, but I don't know when my team are going to show up.
That must be so frustrating. And I know we know all the factors that's gone on, but for Guardiola, who has always been able to rely on those players. It must be, you can see him on the touchline just getting frustrated. And I mean, at Forest, the journalists were asking him why do you keep raising your hands? And we know he does that all the time, but it feels like he's been doing it a lot more this season because he can't even guess what his players are going to do within a game, let alone from game to game.
Yeah, it's been very frustrating, and it feels like they just need to get to the end of the season, but they can't be of the mindset of, oh, we just need to get to the end, because if they do, then they might not get what they need this season.
So I've given my weekly 2-1 prediction. What would you say for City Brighton?
I'll be confident and go 3-1 City. But I do think, they really need to be better than they were on Saturday at Nottingham Forest, because it was another one where you thought, oh, maybe things are worse than you perhaps think.
I mean, you would think it's not that hard to be better than they were at Forest, but I think a lot of that was down to a good Forest side, a difficult ground to go to, a smaller pitch, and that sort of thing. And we heard the old excuse again of the dry pitch from Ruben Dias. So hopefully, City will hope that in the home comforts and the pitch, the sort of bigger pitch and environment that they know, they'll be able to get a win that will be quite crucial. We're back to being negative again. We had a little bit of positivity going into that Forest one, but back to those doubts and the negativity. So we'll be at the newly renamed Etihad Stadium on Saturday. See if City can get that all important win against Brighton, and then, as ever, the reaction from Pep, any players we get to speak to, an analysis throughout the weekend and the week going into what feels like it's going to be a bit of a long international break. So we'll hope for everyone's sake that City will get a win on Saturday. Thanks for joining us, Si. If you can leave a comment, a like, a subscribe, anyone who's listening, where you're listening to us, where you're watching us, and we'll get around to them again. We had some good discussion in the comments last time, so you've helped us talk about tactics today. Tell us what we need to talk about over the international break, and we'll get around to it. So thanks for joining us, and we'll be back next week after City versus Brighton.